Welcome to Ethos Effect podcast.
Welcome to the Ethos Effect podcast.
Podcast.
After building and learning from failures,
We discovered our ethos and leveraged it
to scale, sell, and build again our seven-figure businesses.
whether you're starting out or leveling up.
This podcast is your source for innovation and lasting impact. Hello, welcome to the Ethos Effect podcast. My name is Chelsea Rikus. Before we get started with probably my favorite interview so far, I want to remind you, go ahead, like, share, subscribe. You can find the Ethos Effect podcast on all your normal platforms. In addition, you can find us on YouTube. So today, like I said, we've got a guest that I like a little bit, maybe a lot. He is my husband, Donovan Rikus, actually my co-host for the Ethos Effect podcast. So Donovan Rikus, he's the CEO of Ethos Benefits. He's got a long history of entrepreneurship, which we'll talk about today. He actually just sold 80% of his company in September, and we're going to just dive in really deep to his ethos, what has inspired him to be the amazing entrepreneur that he is today. Thanks for being here.
Of course.
Do you feel weird that your wife is interviewing you?
No, we'll be good.
He's like, I'm used to being grilled by you.
Yeah.
Okay, so take our listeners back to the beginning, and I mean the beginning, like 13 years old.
So back to the origination of wanting to work, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know. I think a lot of kids grow up and they want to be something. They want to be a lawyer, a doctor, accountant. That's just not something that ever resonated with me. Honestly, the thought of being any one thing scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
I really like to learn, but I wasn't quite sure where I was applying it yet. Like I wasn't getting in deep necessarily on any one topic. And I'd say that's kind of when I started to realize, because everybody's asking you, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know. Like,
And you
no
didn't
clue.
play team sports, right?
No team sports, all individual sports, skateboarding, snowboarding, bodybuilding, just stuff I could kind of do on my own. That's how it's always been. So,
Been your MO.
well, I think that entrepreneurship has like very close parallels, particularly like bodybuilding
Mm-hmm.
and entrepreneurship. You can really relate a lot to those two together.
One of my favorite stories is, you couldn't work until you were 15,
Mm-hmm.
and then you took the very first job you could get. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to work before then. So like I would read, internet was just getting going, right? And I had a computer, but like I would read classifieds and try to do stuff like stuffing envelopes.
Okay, time out. Who does that? That's what I want to know. Like, who's like 15 years old and they're looking in the newspaper like, I want to start my life. At 15, I was playing sports, hanging out with my girlfriend, sneaking out at night. I wasn't thinking about
No.
money.
I was kind of investigating. I was investigating, trying to learn something new. When I was a kid, I used to send letters to different chamber of commerces in different cities.
Why?
Because if you wrote them a letter and said, hey, I'm thinking about moving to this city, they would send you all this information about businesses in their city, what their city's about.
Okay, wait, you really did this?
Yes, over and over and over again. So I'd get these big, FedEx envelopes back. And
were your parents like, what the hell is this shit? When it would come in, like, he can't even work yet?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they thought I was trying to run away from home. I'm not really sure.
Wow.
Yeah. So mom said no to all the stuff that might have required like turning the dining room into like an envelope stuffing operation. But yeah, I worked at fast food as soon as I could get a job. 15 years old. That was as quick as I could in Ohio.
A&W, for anyone wondering.
Yeah, stinky job. I would come home not smelling great. Worked there until I could get a job at 16. Then I went to a grocery store where I could wear a tie, which I loved. So I was
Can I share the
grocery
silk
bagger
boxers?
with a tie.
Can I share the silk boxer
that's
story?
weird and way too back.
Now I have to.
All right.
Donovan's mom, one of the first times I met her, she's like, well, it just fits in well to this. So one of the first times I met Donovan's mom, she was like telling me, he's always been a little fancy. Even when he was a young boy, he wanted silk boxers. Like nobody knows as a little boy the difference between silk boxers and cotton. So I'm not surprised that you'd be happy to wear a tie.
Yep. Happy to wear a tie. So I did that, and I just always worked through high school. I mean, through high school, I was probably putting in 30 hours plus at my job.
How are your grades?
Enough to get by.
Okay.
I didn't really see the point. I wasn't I thought I was going to college, but I didn't know what for. So it kind of, there wasn't a driving force. So I did just enough to get by. I can never remember actually doing homework through high school ever.
Would you agree, though, that when you were going through high school, like getting a college degree was important? Like everybody was acting like that was the be all end all, but now it's obviously very different. So for you to not necessarily put so much emphasis on that, I think is also, very telling of you and your kind of foresight.
Yeah, I don't know. I wanted to do it because it seemed like the thing to do. And I did start to go to school. So when I was 18, I was working at Pepsi Bottling Group. It's actually a job I got at 17, but they couldn't have employees until they were 18. So I got hired like 2 months out from my birthday, and then I started on my 18th birthday, started my job at Pepsi. And I was going to, I was working that job and going to college basically at that time. And I was paying for my own school as I was doing it. I was 18 years old. I was making like 55 grand a year.
Wow.
Had my first house built.
It was a salary job?
Yeah. Well, salary and commission, but it was higher salary, lower commission. And working that job, going to college, had a house built at 19. And then I started to reevaluate, like, why am I going to college?
I have a house. So pause. I'm 19.
Yeah.
I'm making at least $55,000 a year at 19. You built your own house.
Mm.
Yeah. Why would you go to college?
I don't know. That's why I quit. Cause at that point in time, you're writing English essays and going to chemistry. And I'm like,
what am I going to use this for?
This is pointless. This is absolutely pointless. So yeah, I kind of decided to take a break from that and started getting into real estate investing.
That was at 19.
Yeah, because shortly after I started working on another one, rented that house out, I think within a year and a half. So I lived there for a little while. And then it was 2,400 square feet. I was living by myself. I was 19 years old. So it was kind of ridiculous. So bought it,
lots
liked
of house
it,
parties.
Enjoyed it. Yes, got in trouble with some house parties. And then I was like, all right, figured out how to kind of get into real estate investing, started renting that out and kind of going down that path.
And then I just want to kind of finish in chronological order your entrepreneurial journey before we dive into the things that motivate you.
Mm-hmm.
You also was Gold's Gym is next, right?
Gold's Gym is next, yeah. So shortly after that, opened a Gold's Gym with my family in Pennsylvania. That was 2007, which everybody remembers.
Interesting
what
timing.
Yeah, everybody remembers 2008,
right?
What happened then. So yeah, we opened a Gold's Gym, also bought a 70,000 square foot commercial building. So the gym took up about 20,000 square feet. And then we had 6 to 8 tenants in the rest of the building. So it was a little bit of real estate, renovation, gym operations, obviously getting it's a sales organization, getting that up and running.
It was a franchise, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Not a very good franchise. Obviously, I think everybody's seen Gold's Gym disappear in their towns. And it's just the lack of direction that they provided franchisees. So typically with a franchise, they'd say, here's how you operate. Do it this way and you'll be successful. Gold's Gym wasn't really doing that. So everybody kind of made it their own, made it more difficult. But it was also a great learning lesson for me.
Do you think when everyone's doing it their own way, it's watering down the brand?
For sure. Yeah. The brand was very inconsistent and gyms would open and fail around us in our state, and that's not helpful for anybody.
Good point.
Yeah.
And so Gold's Gym was a few years?
Gold's Gym, yeah. So I operated it from construction till about 3 years, which is what I told my parents I would do. I was early 20s, and Pennsylvania is not a very exciting place to be in your early 20s.
No way.
No. So I kind of, got through all the challenges, the hurdles. Obviously, like I said, we opened up in October 2007, 2008. We have the Great Recession. Obviously, manufacturing is what Pennsylvania is about. So all those people are getting laid off, not getting overtime. And the last thing those people wanted was another bill that was unnecessary. So they were trying to cancel memberships, weren't getting the same sign-on. So we kind of fought through all that, stabilized, and I did 3 years and got kind of bored with it.
Yeah.
I'd say.
And that fast forwards you to Orlando.
I took a break. Actually went to South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina, which is, I would consider my home. Born in South Carolina, I've lived in South Carolina 3 times in my life. Went back there and got into insurance totally by accident, of course.
Yeah.
The only way anybody can.
Right.
Yeah.
What insurance?
At that time, it was pretty much whatever I could sell. So it was with a company called Bankers Life and Casualty. And I just happened to end up in one of their like briefings. I think a friend told me about it or something. And it's like group interview type thing. So they bring in 20 people and they tell you about the industry. And the industry was great. Financial services, like there's absolutely no glass ceiling. You can work with any type of individual, any type of business you want and work in different lines. So I found that interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know you were selling life insurance, Medicare, all sorts of things.
Yeah. Basic life insurance, which are like $5,000-$10,000 policies.
Mm-hmm.
Medicare insurance. So I'm working with people that are turning 65. Again, I'm mid-20s. That wasn't like my ideal clientele, the way that sales process went. I just wasn't loving it.
Was it emotional?
No, I think it was emotional the other way, right? Like a Medicare sale, if you're a young 20-year-old, you're going there to sell something to somebody that's 65 or older, you have to give them kind of this emotion, but like it wasn't the client base that I was most easily relating with at that point in time. So it was almost like I had to go through this emotional process with them for trust and for all that kind of thing. And it wasn't very motivating. It was very demotivating for me to kind of do that.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you're like selling the same one thing over and over and over again. You got to do it, sell 2 policies a day. And you're kind of just rinse, repeat. Not a lot of problem solving, not a lot of using your brain, just kind of going through this emotional process of building trust and explaining something.
What I don't think a lot of people know about you is in between, these early Bankers Life days through to Ethos Benefits, there was a whole financial services area.
Correct. Yeah. So went on with Bankers for, 2 years and kind of just worked my way up to different policies, more and more complex. So from those small policies to large term policies, and then to index universal life, and then into annuities, and then into eventually becoming a financial advisor. So I went and got my securities license, got a Series 65, and then became a financial advisor, which kind of opened up solutions, complexity, type of client I want to work with. Like I was no longer stuck to like 65 small products, same sale over and over.
Yeah, it was different. It was stimulating and challenging.
Yep.
How long were you in the financial services space, and why did you transition out of it?
Well, I'd say we still are, like it's all financial services. I can't say. So I became a financial advisor. I probably did that for another 2 to 3 years and built up my own registered investment advisory, which was basically the thing I liked about it is at the time, there was something coming up the pipeline called the fiduciary rule, which is the idea that as a financial advisor, you are mandated to make basically to make present the best solutions for your customer. So there was Series 65 where you're mandated to do that, and then the Series 6 or 7, and the legal requirement for that was making recommendations that were suitable, right? So Series 6 and 7 was commission-based financial advising. It's kind of stuff where clients don't often know this versus that, how much, why are you recommending this? And then the legal requirements was really low to do the right thing for your client, essentially. So I went Series 65. I'm mandated to do the best thing. The other thing I liked about it is that it was a transparent fee to those clients and no commission. So it's not like I put them into something, I get a big commission, and then I'm done with them. Right. So it was an ongoing assets under management fee year by year. As soon as I'm not performing for them, I'm not doing what they need, they can just terminate me, go on to somebody else.
Yeah. And that was J. Donovan Financial, LLC.
J. Donovan Financial, yes.
Yeah.
I know where you're going with that one.
Why don't you just tell us then? So you might have noticed Donovan's name is Donovan Rikus, right? His middle name, by the way, for those of you that care, Joseph, Donovan Joseph Rikus. But the company was J. Donovan Financial. And I could always tell who knew him or didn't because they'd be like, can I get a meeting with Jay? I'm like, I don't know who the Jay is, but so why did you name it J. Donovan Financial?
So, I mean, that version of my business was very different. It was just me. I didn't need any employees. Also, one of the reasons I ended up transitioning out of it, which I'll cover in a minute. But so, like Chelsea's saying, Donovan Joseph Rikus. I didn't get too creative. Again, it was a company of one. I didn't have any intentions of getting employees at that point in time. So I was going to name the company Donovan Joseph Financial. So I'm filling out the LLC paperwork and I'm like, you know what? Like maybe I should just do a quick Google search real quick, see what comes up. You know,
always recommended.
It's not my actual name, right? It's like my first name, my middle name. So I was like, I've never Googled my first name, middle name. I don't know what's going to come up. So, based in Florida, and I searched Donovan Joseph, and there's a prolific Florida rapist with the name of Donovan Joseph.
So these business owner clients in need of financial services are going to Google you, and that's what they're going to find.
Yeah. I don't think people would have mistook me for him. I mean, he was like a close to 60-year-old dark-skinned male, right? So I don't think they would have thought it was me, but I just figured that was not the kind of traffic.
Another barrier we needed.
Just not necessary. So I very quickly just changed it on the application right then and there. Again, not much thought to it. J. Donovan Financial instead.
So PSA, Google things before you make them legit, right?
Before you name your company. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So I know this story very well because this is where yours truly kind of enters the scene. But do you want to take us through the evolution to Ethos?
Yeah. So J. Donovan Financial at that point in time, again, registered investment advisory. So I'm working with just individuals on their personal wealth and their portfolios. My niche that I ended up chasing down was business owners, particularly. There's some more complicated tax planning that could be done, that should be done. And it's kind of where I was able to find most of my clients. So I would actually work with a client, either their accountant, and then bring in my own attorney and kind of get all the trust paperwork that they need, like everybody on the same page. Mm-hmm. And when I did that, I would always find something huge that their financial advisor that was more educated, but doing it longer than me, like was totally missing. And that was mainly due to the incentives, right? So They were coming from those commission-based brokers, and their incentive was to sell a product, get a 3% load up front, and then kind of stay in contact with the client and see what else you could sell them down the road.
Take them to golf.
Yeah, right. So that was kind of it. So since I was positioned differently, I'm trying to build a long-term relationship. I'm going to get paid annually as long as I'm taking care of this client. I would go more in depth, bring in accountants, bring in the attorneys, and usually find some big holes in how their companies are structured, how their trusts are structured, how their taxes are flowing, all that kind of stuff. And I was able to get bigger returns for them based on making those fixes than I could, again, try to compete with every advisor out there, trying to compete with New York or whatever. Right. Like it's not feasible that in Florida, you're going to have such a rock star advisor that they're going to be out competing the rest of the market. Mm-hmm. So that was my niche. So in working with business owners, that was going well. I was able to get clients, differentiate myself, bring a lot of value where people weren't seeing it. And one day, one of them asked me to look at their health insurance. So client had about 60 employees, had a nationally, publicly traded broker, huge, does a couple billion a year. And they said, hey, they brought me my healthcare renewal. I have 60 employees. And they said, this is the best they can do. And the best they can do is that I'm going to have to pay 37% more next year. Can you help me? And I said, sure.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I can do that. And I knew absolutely nothing about health insurance. The only type of health insurance I'd ever sold was Medicare. Medicare is very different. It's fixed. The plans are fixed. It's just, you're taking orders.
Yeah.
Right. Group healthcare, very, very different scenario. So I said yes. I spent 2 weeks calling everybody I knew, getting connections, meeting different people, reading, talking to insurance carriers. And I ended up putting together my first self-funded plan. And we not only saved the client that 37%, we also came a few points under. So he's actually paying less than he was prior to that 37% best case scenario that he was going to be kind of forced with.
That's amazing. I want to get to more of the juicy stuff, like your why and your ethos and all that. But for the listeners, to kind of bring this full circle for you, eventually I come into the picture, we partner, and then we go on to rebrand to Ethos Benefits. And I think that's a perfect segue into your ethos. So for those of you that don't know, ethos is the guiding principle or character of a person, organization, or a community. And Donovan and I really believe that all businesses, people in general, communities, countries, they have an ethos that really drives what they do and their success ultimately. And I'm curious, as somebody who, I feel like you came out of the womb an entrepreneur. How and when did you find your ethos, and what is it?
I mean, I'd say a couple things. So like what triggered me to actually leave financial advising, which was very lucrative, to kind of drop that entirely and start in an industry that I was completely unfamiliar with, was that first case. So that first case, I mean, I realized the impact to 60 employees was going to be a 37% price hike coming out of their paycheck.
Yeah.
Every single week, right? Like that's just more that they don't get to take home. So doing that was very personally rewarding, a lot more so than giving somebody a couple extra points on their portfolio that they're not going to be grateful for.
Right.
Like you're not going to get a pat on the back. Trust me. Like you try to show them and illustrate what you did, and nobody cares.
It's expected.
You get to keep your job, right? Yeah. So that part was really rewarding. And what I started to kind of investigate in doing that was why. Why was I able to make this work for this employer where this several billion-dollar public broker that anybody would know wasn't, right? And what it came back to was incentives. Again, same with financial advising and the way employee benefits brokers are paid. So I'd say my personal ethos is a little bit about bringing transparency to employers. The sad part about it is, and I could see this clear as day as a financial advisor, in employee benefits, there's way less transparency about what's happening and way more misaligned incentives on the advice that's coming in. And that's mainly because there doesn't really need to be any disclosure. And the industry's very, very slowly starting to change. But I know I've been preaching the same thing to you for like 10 years. Like this is what's going to happen. Lawsuits are going to happen. And
I remember, I think now it must have been 7 or 8 years ago, you specifically saying the news had a bunch of ERISA lawsuits on retirement plans.
Yeah.
And we were driving. I actually remember exactly where we were. And you were like, this is going to happen in healthcare.
Yeah.
And what we do as bringing that fiduciary approach is going to be so important in the next few years. And I remember being like, you're in the earlier stages of your business, you're really just trying to make some sales and get by and figure it all out. But you were so profound, in my opinion, in thinking with that foresight once again. Because now, I mean, it doesn't take a genius. You literally look at the news and this carrier is getting sued, this plan sponsor is getting sued, the Consolidated Appropriations Act, all this legislation coming out.
Yeah.
And you literally called it 10 years ago. And you've been on the forefront of being a fiduciary.
Yeah. I mean, the sad part about it is, I mean, when you're talking about a healthcare plan, it's employee dollars and employer dollars. But you could be spending $2 million, $5 million in annual premium, and the amount of data you get back on where that money is going can be little to none. And sometimes the little is just, it's really masked. They're kind of showing you the same numbers forwards and backwards, and you can't really extrapolate anything. You can't figure anything out. And even if you saw the problems, they wouldn't allow you to implement the solutions, right? So the ethos, I think, was being a fiduciary. It never benefits anybody to not know something that they should know. And that thing could be as simple as, if I'm recommending this to you, how much do I get paid for this versus all the other things out there that you could buy? And that's what, I kind of just believe should happen for everything, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if I'm laying out 6 plans for you, you need to know exactly how I get compensated on each one. So if you're transparent, you know, align those incentives and then also educate the employers on how the other things work. You bring in the data on where money's actually going. You can put them in a better circumstance every time. And it's not magic. It's just common sense.
I know. And does it frustrate you? I mean, we're driving here this morning and I'm reading you an article from CNN about a family premium is $24,000 and
Yeah.
you know 25% of employers are going to fix that by moving to a narrow network plan and 13% are going to fix that by moving to a PEO, and there's, you know, this huge news outlet reporting on it and no one's talking about the solution.
Yeah.
Does that frustrate you?
No.
Obviously it frustrates the shit out of me, but
it kind of excites me. I mean, that's
Okay.
where we're going to continue to bring value, because what we see is like, you know, the thing I realized in doing those first couple benefit cases is how slowly the large competition moves to get with the market, and how we could just kind of adapt
Yeah.
and do the right things today.
Mhm.
But if you're an agency and you're publicly traded and part of your revenue each year is the bonuses that you receive, it's not easy to just do away with those bonuses and say, you know what, I'm going to offer my clients a better solution, right?
Well, and those bonuses are no joke. 6-figure bonuses, sometimes more. They're paying salaries. Those are, you know, from a business owner standpoint.
Yeah, for a small agency, 6-figure bonuses.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Larger agencies, much bigger. But they're accustomed to those paying for, you know, maybe internal staff bonuses or the holiday party or salaries.
Mhm.
It's not, I want to make it clear, you know, when we talk about misaligned incentives or like perverse incentives, it's not necessarily that there's brokers out there that are bad, right? Like they're doing the wrong thing. It's truly just that the system is not set up in a way that incentivizes people to do it the way you're doing it, bringing that fiduciary approach. It's a lot freaking harder. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination. Like we call it the tail wagging the dog,
Mm-hmm.
right? So insurance carrier pays bonuses to large agency then tells and only educates their employees on certain solutions, not others. And if they try to investigate other ones, they get shut down very quickly. So it really comes, like what the employer's seeing really comes down from literally the insurance carriers, because they're making sure the money's flowing to keep that conversation going their way. And they do it, you know, both with a carrot method and also the stick method. And we've had a little bit of this both, right? Like we've had some of them try to chase us down with the stick when we say, hey, we're going to go do something better.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to offer our clients some different solutions. So
When you think about your overall life and, you know, business life mostly, but maybe even personal if you're open to sharing, do you have another ethos or anything else that kind of guides you in the decisions that you make?
I think something that hit home recently was obviously the sale.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided to sell essentially 80% of our book of clients. And that was basically coming out of a desire to serve more employees, right? Because those clients are employers. Some of the employers were small to mid-size, or maybe even, you know, what some people might consider large. And they were all great businesses, and we did the best work we could for them. But at a lot of the sizes they were, like, it really didn't allow us to do our best work. Like,
Yeah.
The unfortunate thing is, like, the bigger a company is, the better solutions, the better the math works out. You know what I mean? You need at least 100 employees to kind of start offering some of the proper solutions. Before anything less than that, you're kind of relying on the insurance carriers.
Well, and we couldn't, in a lot of ways, create the same alignment in the smaller market. Like a lot of the times you have to take commission, and that's not what we stand for.
Right.
So I agree. And it's funny. I was speaking to some friends this weekend, and there was a comment made about the sale and it being like, oh, you're getting rid of smaller clients. And it hit really hard, honestly, and it was kind of offensive, because I know you would agree that was not at all the point.
No.
It's like far, far from it. It's truly aligning with our best work, which I think anybody in the business journey, right? you'll find when you align yourself with your ethos or your true kind of passion, big things happen and you make bigger impact, which I think is what you were saying.
Yeah. It goes back to my thinking of that first case, that 37% plus that we, didn't have to take out of the employee's paycheck. I want to do that for as many employees as possible.
Yeah.
Because the sad truth of it is, and I see a little bit of this with my parents, they did an okay job with like retirement planning. But if you look at your healthcare plan versus your 401k, if you're even contributing into a 401k, which way too many employees are not.
Right. Well, they're paying for healthcare.
Exactly. And that is the largest reason people are not contributing or contributing more is because their healthcare premiums go up faster than their 401k ever could.
Yeah.
So the money that should be going towards their future is coming out of their paycheck every day, just so they can get a crappier healthcare plan.
With a $5,000 deductible.
Right.
And co-insurance.
Yeah.
Oh, but invest in your HSA, right?
Yeah.
Or go to urgent care. I completely agree. All right, to wrap us up, what do you think is one thing that our listeners would never expect or suspect about you?
I'm in insurance. I'm pretty boring.
Well, you're my husband, and I don't agree with that whatsoever. You're an avid Formula One lover.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paddleboard, mountain bike.
Sure.
I think you're a lot more interesting than you give yourself credit for.
Anything individual I'll do. No, I mean, we're just trying to do our best and live life on our own terms while serving our clients in a way they haven't experienced. And that's kind of what drives me. Like I want us to be able to live whatever type of life, wherever. Like obviously we just came back from nearly a month in Canada.
Yep.
And we're still working with our clients. We're still, they don't even notice or feel that we're not local to them,
right.
Mainly because they're all over the U.S. anyway.
Right.
But living on our own terms, doing what we want, doing good work, and hopefully growing that, make it larger and larger. So
awesome. Well, I am obviously so proud of the work that you've done. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that you really are the mastermind behind Ethos Benefits. You're the architect of all the things.
Sounds evil.
No, truly. I think that, a lot of the times you might not get the recognition that you deserve. So I hope in doing this podcast and, letting people see a different side of you that, you'll continue to kind of step into the spotlight a little bit because you absolutely deserve it.
Yeah, I think I'm realizing we need to. So it's not something I crave. I don't crave attention in any way, whether that's public speaking, which obviously, that's something when we first started our business that I pushed myself out of my comfort zone to do that.
Yeah.
But certainly social media, anything in the public, like it's not really something I crave, but in order to have the impact that we want to make with our business, just realizing it's going to be mandatory.
It's almost like a necessary evil, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here. To our listeners, don't forget to like, subscribe, share the Ethos Effect podcast. You can find us on all your normal channels for podcasting as well as YouTube. Thanks for listening.